Went to the Naval Academy in 1958, so I spent 4 years in Annapolis, Maryland. A lot of cruises. Back then, Navy had a lot of ships, and so we had a cruise every summer on a combatant vessel. And immediately after I was commissioned in 1962, I went to flight training in Pensacola. It finished November '63. Got orders back in the training command as a flight instructor, and that was interesting. I got a lot of hours. Discovered a lot of different ways that other guys tried to kill themselves. I'd never done any of those before, but you learn situational awareness when you have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, trying to fly an airplane that you're in. And then went to jet training, which I loved, and the A4 Skyhawk. Skyhawk was probably the best deal the military ever had. I like to describe it as its nickname was the official name was the Skyhawk. The unofficial nickname was the Heineman's Hot Rod, the Scooter, Tinker Toy. It was very, very small airplane, so small the wings didn't even fold. The only carrier jet that the wings didn't fold on. And it was the last airplane where there's absolutely nothing digital on it. It was strictly an analog computer that was accurate to within 100 miles on a 1,000-mile trip. So it was not something you relied on. A little radar that if it was really peaked up, it could pick out the ship in the middle of the water, which is awful. I like to describe it as the last airplane the military bought where the pilot was smarter than the airplane. And so I like being able to fly in those because it couldn't do things to me I didn't know about. Well, after I was commissioned, I was just a flight student. And then I came back as a flight instructor. So I had, you typically at any given moment, 6 flight students. I was trying to get through primary training. When I got to the squadron, I was in the aircraft division. I had 80 sailors working for me in the airframes, power plants, the check crew, the electricians, and the parachute riggers. So my Air Force guys thought I was kind of dumb because the Air Force, so they didn't do anything except fly till they were about a major. And they had maintenance guys that did the maintenance stuff. But that was a collateral duty for me. I still had to do all the qualifications to be a Navy delivery pilot, which included nuclear weapons, plus take care of my 80 sailors. Fortunately, I had a very tough chief who took care of that for me. And he told me one time, he says, "Hey, Lieutenant, we can run this division 2 ways. You can go ahead and do it, and I'll sit back and watch, and I'll try to keep you from driving over the cliff. But you're probably going to bust your patootie because you're not going to have time to do your airplane. Or you can let me run the division for you. I'll give you the best division in Westpac, and you can go up and study all your handbooks and stuff so you don't crash." I said, "Chief, we got a deal. You got it." And we got the E for our division for corrosion control. Our sister squadron had brand new airplanes, and ours were in better shape than theirs were after the thing, thanks to the chief and me. Of course, I was a division officer, so I got the credit, and he did all the work. Actually, I'm going to be a little cavalier with this because my Marine friends treat it differently from my Navy friends. My Navy friends, "Oh God, Galante, that was awful. You got shot down, you were captured, you were in a POW cell for 6 years and 8 months, 2,432 days. It must have been awful." My Marine friend said, "Galante, you are the luckiest SOB in the history of the Navy. You were in the Navy 20 years and only had to make 1 cruise. And most of that was overseas shore duty, luxuriating in a gated community." And so it puts it in perspective. It was a rough go, but the neat thing was, I think I learned one very valuable lesson. The reason so many folks join the American Legion and the other service organizations is it's a defining experience of their life. Everything else comes second. Everything they did when they have the most fun as adults is going back to reunions of their buddies, the guys they have something in common with. Because Navy calls them sand crabs, I call them civilians, but they're people who've never served. And they don't really understand it, and they never will. because they didn't go through a boot camp. They weren't in a platoon or a division or an organization. We're 24/7. That's all they did, and it's a moving experience. So my biggest thing about Hanoi is the friends I made over there. And we still have reunions, and we get 60 or 70% of the guys who are still alive come to them, and it's the only time I never hear anybody complain about anything. Oh, frankly, for a long time, I was in the military. I thought the guys just wearing funny-looking little hats around and whatever. But then I found out after I came back just how much they do. And this was, I mentioned the camaraderie before. The reason people, that is the defining experience of most individuals' lives, their military service. And the American Legion captured that. So it wasn't just Navy or Army or whatever, it was all services, but it's the same spirit. And so I think that's the reason I get involved. That's the reason I think a lot of Legionnaires get involved, is because they get to associate with men and women now of the same ilk, the same mindset. They're the advocates for veterans. So in Virginia, we have 830,000 veterans. That's a lot. It's 10%, 11% of our population. Population-wise, percentage, I think we're right up there, second or third in the country. In raw numbers, that's a bunch, and that gets politicians' attention. You have to make certain that you get the message to them, and the American Legion does that. I mean, they go in our General Assembly with bugles blazing. They call it charging up the hill in Virginia, and when the Legion storms the hill, our legislators know it. Well, I think the big thing is that young, unless it's American Idol, young people don't join anything, unless it's a rock concert or something like that. The big challenge for the Legion, and I think for every one of these organizations to stay in existence, is to attract new members. The veterans really need an advocate who's outside of government to advocate on their behalf to the government, make certain they get what they want. And the Legion does that better than anybody. We just have to make certain we can pass that on to the younger generation. I think it's the last of the patriotic groups, period. It's not a good thing to say in our country, but it's not, patriotism is not taught in the schools anymore. In fact, it's almost made a joke of. And yet our Legionnaires, they'll go into schools and they're, when they finish speaking about their either military experience or what they've done as Legionnaires, the youngsters are stunned that that really goes on because they haven't heard it from their teachers. The only way you get the word out to the population is through Legionnaires doing public speaking and showing up. Legionnaires and other service organizations have a great story to tell, and I think there may be a point sometime in the future where the Legion is going to have advocates from who were not veterans as members, possibly at another branch of the auxiliary, because the numbers just aren't there, won't be there to support it. Younger generation wants to do its own thing, and they may be too late by the time they realize just how much the Legion could have done for them.